Good morning. Welcome to Thinking is Contagious. Couple of things I want to talk about. I don't know if you've heard about Marine Lieutenant Colonel Scheller, who is now going to be court-martialed. And he's going to be court-martialed. He's a 17-year Marine veteran, highly decorated, stellar record. He's going to be court-martialed because he posted a video protesting the United States withdrawal in Afghanistan, and because he demanded accountability for the decisions and the results of those decisions. And he wanted someone to stand up and say, we messed up. And he criticizes superiors, and he's being charged with disobeying orders. And he's facing a court martial for misdemeanor, okay, which shows you that how flimsy this case is. Charges to have him basically disbarred from the military. This is a travesty. This guy is entitled to his opinion, and this is basically led because the Biden administration cannot accept criticism. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, total incompetence. Everyone that works for him, totally incompetence. I don't know if you've heard or watched any of the hearings for the Biden appointees from anything from attorney general to various judicial posts. Total woke, incompetent people who are biased, people who are prejudiced against conservatives, people who are prejudiced and biased against anything that's establishment in this country. Tweets are constantly being brought out about these appointees, and all they can say when asked about the tweets is, oh, I thought differently back then. Oh, I apologize. Oh, I'm very sorry. Oh, I am going to be very good from here going forward. The only reason they're apologizing, the only reason they're saying they're sorry about things is because they're being exposed, they've been caught, and they need to cover their tracks so that they can get the posts that they want to get, so that they can continue their biased behavior towards anything conservative and anything American. And those are the facts. The jobs report, 194,000 jobs created. The expectation was 500,000. Way off. I had to really laugh when I read a Washington Post article about why. And they go on to lament about, as usual, these liberals, there's two things they jump on: race and gender. Everything is, when they want to, when they ingratiate themselves to their audience, they bring up how they're helping women, or how they're helping the certain racial components of society. That's how they do it. That's how they cover up their self-serving agendas behind the smokescreen of race and gender. The Washington Post article says 310,000 women over 20 dropped out of the labor force in September, while 182,000 men joined. And then the Washington Post says the simplest explanation is the rapidly spreading Delta virus. I don't think so. The rapidly spreading Delta virus is the rapidly diminishing Delta virus. And while we are talking September numbers, it was already starting to diminish halfway through September. And the Delta variant does not keep people. We were out last night at a restaurant with my son and his fiance. Slammed. Every restaurant in Miami slammed. Movie theaters slammed. Stores slammed. No one is staying home because of the Delta variant. Okay, that is fabrication in the Fantasyland realm, the Fantasyland agenda of liberal media, and the Washington Post is the epitome of the phrase liberal media. Now, there's also a reference in there about, in the Post article, about the 11 million jobs available, openings in America, the JOLTS report, where we've talked about before. And I believe in my last report, I said it was 5.5 million Americans unemployed. It's actually 7 million, so I stand corrected. But the unemployment rate has dropped to 4.8%. And again, this is attributed to the fact that how many people have left the workforce. 5 million people in that in the Post article, you're saying 5 million people stopped looking for jobs when the pandemic started. And they point to the big factor being the reason why people have left the workforce now, women especially, the 300 plus thousand that they said left in September. The reason that they've left the workforce, and they point to childcare as being a big factor. And there's actually a quote in the article from a woman that they talked to her about her job search and why she's decided not to look for a job. She says, if I get a part-time teaching job, she says, I'll have to pay more for childcare than what I would make. Well, that was the case before the pandemic as well. What the Washington Post fails to talk about, because not that they don't know this or they don't see this or don't see how obvious it is, but because it defeats the narrative and the agenda. This same factor existed when this woman was working before the pandemic and still had the child care issue. Okay, because yes, the schools are open now. That's not an excuse. If you're keeping your kid home, it's because you choose to keep your kid home you want to follow the science for no reason, because there is no reason to fear COVID for children, and that's the science. Okay, so she's throwing out this smokescreen saying, "Oh, because it's not worth it for me to do it." Why? The factor why this decision is viable now to say forego going to work is because we had those enhanced unemployment benefits for so long, those payments, those payouts, those child care credits that enabled people in the lower socioeconomic rung of the ladder to have more savings than they've ever had. And it enabled them to put away money, and they feel far more comfortable. And they are willing now to wait it out, because while they've lost the enhanced unemployment, they can continue receiving the regular scheduled state unemployment, and they have savings that they can use up slowly to pad or to make up for the difference of what they would be making with their jobs, which indicates to you that what we're talking about here is the lower wage workers, okay, are the ones that are leading this false narrative. And to further prove that, in the Washington Post article, September, 350,000 jobs were added for people with college educations, while 430,000 jobs were lost for people with high school or less. And then the Washington Post goes on to defend these positions as if someone is being enslaved or someone is being taken advantage of. It says people are waiting for the right jobs that pay them what they deserve. People are revolting against years of poor pay and stressful conditions. Let me ask you something. Are you totally oblivious to the fact that this is all within your control? All these factors, the fact that people with college educations got 450,000 jobs and those without lost 350,000 jobs, the people who are coming off or who are not looking for jobs, they're not looking for work. All these things point in one direction, and the fact that someone comes out and says that someone is revolting against years of poor pay, you think your pay was poor? Why don't you get an education, better educate yourself? Why don't you get training? Okay, why don't you get training in some type of vocation? Why didn't you attempt to improve your lot in life instead of just saying, "Oh, I've been subject to all these abuses all these years"? You have no power, you have no say, you have no defense, you have no ability to defend yourself, you have no ability to improve yourself. Everything is someone else's fault. No. What's happening in this country, plain and simple, with the jobs, is a bunch of people have decided that they can afford to stay home because the government lined their pockets with taxpayer dollars. Taxpayer dollars that come, more than 70% of those dollars came from the top 10% wage earners. We are being fed a line of BS that is only has one intention, and that is to gather the votes of the masses. And the masses are the vast are the people that are being discussed as being the most oppressed in this new system. So the very people that the woke left is saying that they are protecting is who they are costing in the long run, because these jobs that these low wage earners are not taking because they're expecting to be paid $15, $16, $17 an hour, those jobs are not coming back. Those jobs will be replaced with artificial intelligence, technology, automation. Those jobs are not coming back. And until that segment of the population gets training, whether it be education, degrees, vocational training, decides to improve their viability as employees and warrant the $15, $16, $17 an hour pay rate, when that is warranted based on what you're bringing to the table, those will be the jobs that get filled, and those will be the people who get those jobs. But this thing that because you are now unemployed and you're looking for a job and you have no skills, and you're saying, I'm waiting till I get paid $15 an hour to accept a job, and meanwhile, I'm going to take unemployment, and meanwhile, I'm going to slowly use up the money that the government has given me, that has lined my savings account to a point that has never existed in this country. The savings rate in this country is at an all-time record level. And those dollars that have been used to line those savings accounts and to keep people home from working, there is no mistake of why this has happened. And this is a vote buying scheme to buy the vote of the masses. The powers that be know that that top 10%, that 1%, that top 5%, you're not going to buy them. You're not going to buy them because there's not enough money that can be doled out to influence that vote. But the vast majority of America's population, 60% of America's population, 65% of America's population can be bought with the crumbs that fall from the feeding trough of which these politicians gorge. Just with crumbs. And that's what they're doing. Because the mandate is stay in power, stay elected, control, be in power so that you can continue to take advantage of this system and continue to line your pockets. You know, I'm reading a book about religion, John Wycliffe, the early stages of what became the Protestant movement. And it's very interesting because in this book, they reference that before, when Christians were persecuted, those who were Christians, who were Christians, were truly Christians, because there was only pain and hurt and suffering physically that came from being a Christian, and it was only the spiritual component of Christianity which had true believers willing to endure this physical hardships and tortures and persecutions because of their true belief in their religion and in Jesus and in God. Once that persecution piece went away, and once the church became powerful, the Catholic Church became powerful, and once it became a huge business, all of a sudden, many people who had no fundamental spiritual component, who were not true fervent believers in Jesus and in God and in the church, joined and became part of it because it was a money making machine. And it ruined Christianity. And that is where Wycliffe, starts his studies. He was an Oxford philosopher, biblical scholar, Oxford professor, and he lived during the 14th century. Uh, Started his studies and started pointing and started going after the church, and he was persecuted, and he was brought up on charges, and he was able to persevere, but his whole premise was that the corruption of the scriptures and of the church, the Catholic Church, was bastardizing the Word of God, and that was all because of the power and the money and the control that the church was afforded as it became a big business. He doesn't use the term business, but the premise is that. Well, there's a very similar parallel with government, our founding fathers, how this country started, and where we are today. And it's the same thing. Founding fathers started this country, and obviously, there are some points to be made here. Who they were, where they came from, how they set this up. I understand some of it was self-serving, but the basic premise was that, this was set up as a government where people were to serve the people through the political office, and it was supposed to be, established people who had made their way in the world and had something to give back and offer leadership. That is a parallel with the church issue that I spoke about, because once politics became a business, once it became a college course, once it became a vocation that you came out of college and entered into directly because of the money, the power, and the control, not because you were looking to help society, but because you were looking to take from society, take from the taxpayer dole. You hook yourself up to that endless IV of taxpayer dollars. Coming out of college at 25, 26, 27, look at AOC. What could that woman, what could that person of that age with that work and life experience ever offer to society? A society of people who have raised families, sacrificed, made ends meet on salaries that pale in comparison to what these politicians draw, who have lived life, the hardships, the experiences, just from the fact that they're 40, 50, 60 years old. And here's this inexperienced person with a minimal foundation of what life is all about, sitting up there and preaching and telling how New York's, it's not a good idea for New York to allow Amazon, for example, in because of all the ESG incorrect behavior of Amazon. They don't want them in the state. Well, guess what? Those were tens of thousands of jobs that New Yorkers could have had, income that the state of New York could have had, that never happened because of her ineptitude, inexperience, and her personal agenda of the panacea of communism and socialism that on paper sounds like a great idea, but once you implement it into society, you realize it's an abject failure. It will always be a failure. It has always been a failure. And then we have people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren clamoring and screaming and going down the path of this destructive socialist agenda, being elected as leaders? No. It's exactly the same thing as what Wycliffe fought. Politics today, it's not altruistic endeavor to help society. It's now a money-making scheme to bilk the sources of revenue of this country which are the entrepreneurs, the business leaders, the business creators, the risk takers, to take what they are earning, to take a piece of it, a large piece of it, 50% of it or more in many cases, to take that without any skin in the game, without any exposure, without any liability, without any risk taking, without any gray matter being involved other than the gray matter needed to tap into this and steal these revenue streams. This is exactly how the politicians today on both sides of the equation are making themselves rich. And all the while they're saying, we're going to take care of the lower wage people. We're going to get you $15 an hour. Believe me, you're not going to get $15 an hour if what you produce for a business is not greater than that. And you're not going to get $15 an hour as flipping burgers or washing dishes or taking care of babies. You're not going to get $15 an hour. If you want to get $15, $20, $100, $200 an hour, you have to produce that plus more for your employer. So this is a total fallacy, out of thin air, to expect that someone who represents $3 or $4 of revenue per hour to an employer, or $10, is going to get paid $15. It's not going to happen. Common sense, people. Open your eyes and common sense. If you were the business owner and I came to you and said, hey, you got to pay me $15, I'm going to produce $10. I'm going to produce $10 worth of revenue for you, but you got to pay me $15 an hour. What are you going to do? No, sorry, not interested. That's what's happening. And it will continue to happen. And with these people in making those demands, because those demands are being fueled by the politicians who are just buying their votes and conning them. When those people continue making these demands, they don't realize that what the employer is going to do is replace them with automation. And they will find one very good, competent worker that will produce $25, $30 an hour. They will make that person a supervisor or watch over this automation process that's taken place. So it'll be one person overseeing an automated process that normally hired 4 or 5 people to do. This automation will be in place. Artificial intelligence, technology, whatever it is, will be in place. You'll have one person making sure that the system is running smoothly, writing reports, inputting information, and that person will make 15, 20 bucks, 25, 30, whatever it is, because they're qualified, prepared, and they are producing an income that is greater than what they are being paid. And if you don't want that format where you have to produce more in order to get paid a portion of what you produce, then take the risk and start your own business. Do your own thing. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have no risk, work 9 to 5, have weekends off, not worry about the phone ringing at 10 o'clock at night with a problem, not have to run into the office or the factory at 6 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night. If you can't have that, you can't have that or avoid that, you can't avoid that and be paid as if you had that. You're either in with skin in the game, risk to lose it all, entrepreneurial risk, or if you're an employee, you're going to make a portion of what you produce. You're not going to make more than what you produce or the same as you produce or near what you produce. It's not going to happen. Those are the facts. That is reality. It doesn't matter what the liberal left says. The bleeding heart liberals, all they want is one thing from you. They're giving you a few pennies so that you vote for them. And that's the bottom line. All right. I hope that this strikes a chord. I hope that you pass this around. And I hope that you continue listening and subscribing. And let me know that you like this. Thank you.